is up, dudes and dudettes? This is, of course, your favorite Shogun here, Sugi, and today I'm gonna be reviewing yet another Netflix original anime series. This one is called Bastard Ankoku no Hakaishin, or in English, Bastard Heavy Metal Dark Fantasy. And this is considered part 1, which consists of 13 episodes. Part 2 is likely going to be airing somewhere down this year, maybe in a couple of months, and I also believe it's going to be another additional 13 episodes. Now, this is based on a manga that came out in the late 80s and has been kind of on and off because the author's health issues, and it actually aired, originally on Weekly Shonen Jump, and it has kind of jumped on different magazines over time, and it's still, under on the making, so to speak, so it's still kind of like being published. And basically, what exactly is Bastard about? What is the premise of this anime? So this takes place in the kingdom of Metallicana, not to be confused with the dragon from Fairy Tail. And it has been under attack from the Four Lords of Havoc, which are running this sort of a, dark army or something like that. And basically, it is consisted of like, 4 very strong, characters who are kind of like, wanting to make the world succumb into this sort of a destruction and like a new type of world order under this sort of a demon entity, which is talked about in the very beginning of this anime. So there was this great fight between a dragon and this sort of like a dark entity, basically, which were like the embodiment of like the darkness in people's hearts and obviously the hope or the light of the people. And basically, in the beginning of the anime, they decide to summon this mighty wizard known as Dark Schneider, who is the main character of this show. Kind of weird name because Schneider means a tailor. A dark tailor would be the English translation of the name. And he is basically the most powerful, magician in the world. And basically, he is summoned back into the modern day after he has been dead for 15 years. And he has like roamed the earth for like 4 centuries or something. And now he's basically fighting against the Four Lords who used to actually be under his command before. And that's kind of like the base main premise of this whole story. I don't know like how much it actually evolves from that. Like I haven't read the manga, I haven't seen the original OVAs, which were released, I believe, in the 90s. So in case you want to like watch other iterations in a very different art style, you can also do that. However, at the moment at least, the Netflix version does have a bit of a higher rating on MAL, so in case that actually counts for something. Now, this has been animated by Liden Films, which I often somehow I don't actually watch on like what is Liden Films producing next. I just come across their shows, and then when I like finish the review, I like realize, oh, this was done by Liden Films, and they have basically done a lot of stuff in the past which I have enjoyed. And it's not necessarily their art style, it just seems that they're gonna be doing a lot of these animes which are more akin to what I enjoy, which is kind of like these shonen seinen-esque types of shows like Terraformers, for instance. Now, this is a fantasy show, but it's also an ecchi show. It really reminds me of Queen's Blade, which is probably the closest type of anime there is, which is like very revealing lady parts being showed, mixed with some type of fantasy setting with swords and knights and magic. Now, in a lot of ways, it's how you kind of view this anime. So in the description, it's kind of like listed as seinen. In Wikipedia, it says shonen and seinen. And there's like constantly this breaking of the fourth wall where the characters talk about like this being a shonen manga and all that type of stuff. But there are definitely like seinen elements. There's a lot of gore, arms get sliced off, heads get sliced off, so there's blood in this one. But in terms of its tone though, which is very important, like you can have massive amounts of gore, but at the same time, depending on like which way people die, is it on more a dark comedy-esque, and what is the general tone of the anime or the manga in general really sets out like how does that gore really feel. So fundamentally, like it's not like this sort of a super violent type of a show. In a way it is, but the tone is very light-hearted in this anime. So really all the seinen aspects are really the ecchi stuff and the gore, but when you look into the dialogue and everything, it's like very shonen-esque, very, let's not use the word perverted, but ecchi instead. Now, the problem with these types of like, when you have watched like anime for literally over 20 years like I have, at one point you're definitely, unless you're like totally some sex addict, you're gonna be very much grown tired of any form of like ecchi type of stuff, and you like, once you have seen a couple of them, you have seen them all, and Bastard is no exception to that. However, it kind of reminds me of an ecchi fantasy show known as Seikon no Quasar, and that was kind of like where that anime was combining, or more so balancing, the aspect of like actual decent fantasy story with ecchi elements. And time again in this anime, I feel there are segments where I'm like kind of getting drawn into the story and the characters, and like, you know, finding something appealing and interesting about it. And then obviously there's some like massive ecchi scene about sexuality and banging bitches and stuff like that. And is that like, you know, killing that's you know, possible immersion in the show? Sure, but for some people they might like the mix of that, of those two elements coming together. So I understand that. So it's not like this, most of the ecchi shows are really, really bad in terms of the story. There's nothing, absolutely nothing of substance in them. But in a lot of ways, Bastard, I think it's a bit more a finer or nuanced product of this genre, where there is this combination. Not to say that, you know, this is like a masterpiece or anything, or neither was Seikon no Quasar, but they're definitely like better than your average ecchi out there, definitely, if you're looking for something else beyond, you know, that sexual content. But I don't really know how this story is gonna like develop further, like after, you know, Dark Schneider is, you know, done with the four lords. Like, what is the next arc after that? And until I get into that arc, I can't really say is this anime good or not, because usually you have to go through a couple of arcs to figure out the formula and also evaluate the story. If the story arcs are going to be repeating themselves, it's another monster of the week, and, you know, there's no twists or anything. So way the arcs work are very fundamental part, like how these types of shows, you know, do for me at least. Now, because we don't really know yet, like, what is the current direction here after, like, you know, this main battle or this arc is basically concluded, I can't really say, like, how much I feel about it. And I think we're going to be seeing that conclusion in the next 13 episodes. Just a hunch, but not a confirmation, obviously. So I have to see more before I can give you a more educated opinion. Now, in terms of the music, as the title says, heavy metal. And that's obviously, you know, might be a reference to the heavy metal movie, or I don't actually know which one came first. But, you know, back then you had these sort of a more fantasy heavy metal types of, you know, adult movies produced in the West, in the Americas. And, you know, some of them good, some of them bad. But I kind of like the, you know, the look is very different from the OVA. And I mean, in terms of animation, I think Let Them Film did okay here. You know, there's some okay fight scenes there. Not like super amazing or something that I'm very interested in. That might come later down the line. But they are definitely above average fantasy show, though. So even if we would like, remove all the ecchi elements and review it from pure fantasy aspect, I think it's definitely better from a lot of the generic stuff you get per season. Now, in terms of the music, so just kind of going back to that heavy metal stuff. So we actually do have a heavy metal opening from a Japanese band known as Cold Rain, and the opening theme is Bloody Power Fame. And actually, I did enjoy this opening. I mean, I listen to a lot of music, and a lot of Japanese music for that one, outside of, you know, your anime OPs and stuff like that. But I have to say I haven't come across this band, and I have to actually look into more of their material. But I think this was actually pretty good. I also like the ending theme, Blessless by TL. So in terms of openings and endings, they were definitely more rememberable from a lot of the other stuff I usually watch. Like, I still, you know, it's been a week since I reviewed Spriggan, and I'm barely remembering the OP right now. But I remember I enjoyed it. I liked it. But I barely remember it, okay? But if you play a couple of seconds, I probably, like, my memory will catch up. But in terms of, like, the other parts of the OST, it doesn't really have that much, like, metal. And even the opening is made by would we actually class it as a hard rock band? It's kind of barely metal, to be honest, and I think this OST could have definitely used some symphonic metal. Would have been excellent choice to have that type of stuff. But the OST didn't warm me up at all. I don't remember anything about it, so it was really like non-existent for the most part. I guess it did its job, but fundamentally like hard to say. But I mean, definitely like if you liked Queen's Blade, you might like Bastard. Not to say that I watched. I mean, I think I watched one episode of Queen's Blade, and like too much ecchi for me. I just just go straight to hentai, to be honest. If you're like why bother with ecchi? But I fundamentally didn't think it was that bad. Like initially you might think, oh, this is just ecchi stuff, but it does develop a bit, and you kind of like get drawn into it. But it's just like really about your personal threshold of like what is too much of ecchi, and what is how much the story has to actually deliver to be interesting. So it's kind of there on the border for me, and I guess for a lot of other people as well. But I will definitely be watching the part 2, and definitely also going to be reviewing it on the channel when we're going to be knowing when it's going to be, or actually I'm just looking up, it's going to be 11 episodes apparently, and it's going to be also airing this year. But thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more other reviews on the channel. I'm going to be doing some backlog and some retro stuff as well, so I'm very excited to talk about those. But I will be seeing you very soon. Cheers.